Welcome everybody. So glad to have you here, and welcome Alexandra. We're super excited to have you with us.
Thank you
Uh,
for having me.
yeah, absolutely. So Alexandra has a super interesting background. I'll let you like speak a little bit more to it, because I want you to get into all the details. But she is coming through one of our partner organizations and very dear to our heart, which is Future of Cities. And they've been focusing on regenerative placemaking and trying to rethink how we live in cities and doing some really good work. And I'm really excited for this panel because usually, that would be a more probably a more like technical development kind of talk, and in here we're gonna weave it way more with like purpose and how how rethinking cities and how we live in them is affecting how we are and how we live and how we relate to each other and to our environment. So I'm really excited about this panel. Alexandra, I'll let you introduce yourself so you can pick and choose which are the highlights of all the many things that you have done.
Oh, thank you.
And then the stage is all yours. Thank you so much for being
Thank you so much, Nicolas. Very humbled to be here. Thank you all for joining an online event. So I'll just do a brief background just to be confirmed. What's my time cap so I don't go over exactly, Nicolas?
Let me confirm. Annie, are you here? Because I'm not sure if we compile two panels in 1 hour or you have the full hour.
Yeah, do I have an hour, 45 minutes? Just because I'd like to give time for us to talk at the end. So
Annie,
you're on mute, Annie.
Yeah, we have 1 hour for
1 hour. Okay, great.
Would be great to finish 5 minutes before so we get some time.
Yeah, no, well, I'm going to engage you all. It's not going to be me talking for an hour at all.
Perfect.
So I need all of your active participations. So a brief background about myself. I come with many years of international affairs background. I studied international politics and a master's in environmental policy. I'm Lebanese American, so I worked for the Lebanese mission to the United Nations in New York at the headquarters when we were negotiating the SDGs. So that was a pretty intense experience. You had 193 countries all arguing over what's the most important priority for them development-wise. So that's how we ended up with 17 SDGs. And then after that experience, I moved back to the Middle East to really go from that global policy discussion to really work on the ground and see how things are actually playing out. So I worked in refugee camps in Syria and in Lebanon and founded my own NGO. I'll talk a little bit about it during my presentation because I worked in urban camps and a lot of, when we're talking about regenerative development, there's a lot of things to think about when you talk about conflict zones, because the human aspect is very critical in terms of how places and gatherings are built. So that's, in a quick summary, my experience was divided mostly between diplomacy and working on the ground in refugee camps. And now I'm here in Miami, working at the Future of Cities with Tony Cho, who's our CEO and the visionary. And pretty much what we're doing is trying to implement and define what is regenerative placemaking. So what does this mean? How can we do urban development differently? How can we recreate the way we do cities so that we leave places off better than when we left them? And let's move beyond sustainability and all of these kind of greenwashing terms, and let's get actually into action and let's do things. So we have a beautiful hub based in Little Haiti in Miami. Love for all of you to come visit us. We just opened it. It's a climate innovation hub. And the reason we're in Little Haiti is one of the most underserved communities, not just in Southern Florida, but in the United States. Also, we just announced yesterday, we've been kind of keeping quiet about a big project we have in Jacksonville, where we have about 8 acres of land, 2 huge warehouses to build the Phoenix Arts and Innovation District. So this is a super exciting project. We have loads of space. We're going to do urban agriculture and gardening. We're going to do artist residencies, affordable housing. It's sort of like a blank slate to work with the community to address those urban challenges. And just a brief on Jacksonville is, it's the neighborhoods we're working are really food deserts. So we're trying to bring, people closer to accessible and affordable, healthy foods. But anyway, that's a quick background. I'm just going to jump into a presentation and let me see if I can share a screen. So I don't know if you guys can all, hope you can all do your microphones. Let me see if this works. Sorry, it's on the same tab. Can you see this PowerPoint? Yes, maybe.
Yeah, Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Participants can now see your screen. Okay, so this is future of cities. So I want to engage you guys all, if that's all right, in the beginning. And let's talk about who lives in cities. Who are the stakeholders in cities? Children, parents, taxi drivers, restaurant owners, policemen. Who are really the stakeholders in the city? So the reason I asked this, yeah, go ahead. Anyone want to jump in?
I mean, local business owner. I mean, you listed off a lot of them, but people throughout the 12 sectors. I mean, infrastructure and environment people, educators, people in health and wellness, people in governance, people in arts and culture and media, technology, spirituality,
Totally.
and then fractal roles within all of those sectors.
Definitely. And I invite us to think about this because if we're going to, think about a new approach. Instead of, we don't build cities for robots, right? Like we build cities for human beings and we build cities for the natural environment. So I feel like the new approach isn't just about making, things work so that they fit in place and then we have architecture and planning. We want to build cities that are for the human experience. And what makes our cities livable? I mean, where are you all zooming in from? What cities do you guys live in? I see there's a chat, which is great. I mean, I'm in Miami. I just moved here from Cairo, Asheville. Okay, nice. Seattle. What makes your city livable? What are the things you love about your city? What are the things that make it a pleasant place to move around? Nomads on the road, currently in Joshua Tree. Nice. So I was in Cairo, Egypt, and now I'm in Miami, US. And one thing that made Cairo very unlivable was the air pollution. It was just absolutely a daily strife, a daily struggle where it was very aggressive. You just feel like you're inhaling pollution. It's a beautiful city, but there's a layer of fog. Pittsburgh, green space, definitely. I mean, Miami, I'm new here, but I'm never going to take for granted the beautiful amounts of green, the way that nature is incorporated into many areas of this city with the trees, exactly, Joshua said, thank you, preserving nature. Medellin, Colombia is another city that I visited last year that I felt really has a more harmonious relationship with nature, where you're walking down these streets and there's cafes and restaurants, but then there's a waterfall. And then there's, these two species, the human life and the non-human life, are not mutually exclusive. They should be working together. Going back to Cairo, I mean, we have the Nile River, a beautiful river, but completely polluted. Transportation, what makes city livable? Can I move around? Is there a subway? Is there a train? Is affordable transport? Affordable housing, thank you, Joshua. I mean, I think the questions that we ask ourselves when we think about when we live in cities really is going to help us when we're as planners, as developers, as architects, as environmental scientists, as, school district people. We all have a part to play. When I ask who lives in cities, because what is that role? The small business owner that you mentioned, they're making a restaurant, right? That maybe makes that city livable. For me, what makes city livable, I want international culture. So that small business owner that runs a Haitian Creole restaurant gives that city that flavor because they're contributing to my experience in that city. I can have different cuisines when I walk down the street. Swimming, riverfront parks, absolutely. And when I dive more into my presentation, I'm going to talk about, spaces in particular is something that I would invite all of us to think about and discuss. It's going to be one of our principles. We're developing a framework. And of our framework, one of our principles is going to talk about spaces. I mean, just a space that's free, that's public, that's communal, that's safe, that's clean. Not a lot of cities have that. I invite you guys to chime in if you want. I'm going to go into presentation, so we have time, but if you want to comment on what makes your cities livable. Yeah, I see here murals, music in the streets, absolutely. I also lived in New York, which is a city with a lot of stress, but also a lot of artistic beauty. And one thing that made the subway a bit more bearable was when there'd be a folk band on the tracks playing and performing before I jump on my train in my morning commute. But one thing that didn't make it very livable is when there's rats and when it's dirty and that kind of aggressiveness in your face. And I think what's also important to think about when we talk about who lives in cities is who's making these decisions. We're all decision makers in cities. It's not just up to the mayor, right? It's not just up to the corporations that own the streets, the banks on the streets, all of us are contributing this role. And And I think what's important is to recognize our power as well. We don't have to sit and wait sort of for the formal decision makers to make those decisions. And I think one thing that we're trying to do differently is take that proactive role. Just thinking about, you know, community activities, community trust, all of this involves how everyone involved in the city is aware of their surroundings. I'm going to switch screen for a minute to show you something. This is Lebanon. Let me know if you can see the PowerPoint. Okay. So here you have, this was a bit, the map is a bit, oops, sorry. Okay, I don't know why, well, let me do the slideshow here. Okay, so these gray circles that you see on this map, those are refugee communities. So these are people, these are human beings, right? And I invite us to think about refugees when we think about cities, because it's people that are flocking, that are fleeing from a life or death situation, and they need to find out where to live, right? Temporarily, maybe long-term, we don't know. Nobody knows how long the war is going to last. So you see that people are flocking. These are the two main cities, I don't know if you can see my mouse, the two main cities of Lebanon. You have Beirut here, the capital, and then you have Tripoli in the north. You notice people are flocking to cities. You know, when people think of refugees, they think of this tents in the rural areas, which is true out here in Lebanon and in other parts of the world where there are refugees that live in tents and in agriculture areas. But the majority of refugees are going around cities. Why? Because there's jobs, because there's housing, because there's a life to live, because maybe there's a chance that they can provide for their children. So, I mean, these are all things that when we think about how do we plan around this? I mean, this is an extreme, the most extreme case of humans, you know, arriving and migrating. But if we take a less extreme situation like Miami or any of the US cities that receive immigrants, that receive people choosing to leave and enter a new town, you know, how are we, what is the role of the newcomer? Because these are people that are entering the new place, and what is the role of the people receiving them? So I'm just sort of, I'm gonna go back to see what the comments in the chat are, because I really love to engage you guys here. We have a quote, "I've taken the role of a positive contrarian here and say that there's no such thing as regenerative cities. Generate all the resources to sustain that concentrated people practicing in a given environment. Interconnected networks of regenerative villages in a bioregional scale where they are carrying the capacity." So, I mean, yeah, you know, these are really challenging things. And I'm going to go back now to my initial presentation. But I just sort of wanted to open with all of us being able to think about these things together and think about what, oops, that's not what I wanted to share. Sorry, again. Hold on. Do I have any questions before I move on? Does anybody want to comment? I mean, I really wanted this to be sort of engaged. Stop share. Okay. Let me see how we can get this back to. Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay, anyway, so this was just sort of an intro to think, just to challenge us to think a little bit differently when we think about cities. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing. So regenerative placemaking. So back now to Miami, here we are in future cities. And this is sort of our definition, which is the strategic process of reigniting people's relationships to socioeconomic systems through place-specific activities. So pretty much we're redefining the relationship that humans have with their environment, with other humans and with the non-human environment, the natural environment. If placemaking is, as I'm sure you're all familiar with these terms, is referring to the process of making urban centers and neighborhoods more livable by ensuring economic opportunity, food accessibility, and climate sustainable infrastructure. So those three things, I mean, are super important, whether you're in a refugee camp or in a city looking for an economic opportunity or food, or whether you're in New York or Los Angeles and you're looking to move your family and start a new life. I mean, everyone, most of these stakeholders in the cities are all looking for the same kind of quality of life. So what are we trying to say here is that I want all of your guys' help also in defining this term. So what we've been doing at Future Cities is we're building a framework, which is what I'm taking the lead on. And I invite all of you to email me, contact me if you want to get involved. I'm building a framework that's going to be global for the world to use for anyone who's working in a city, whether you're the mayor, whether you are a corporate working in ESG, whether you're running a school district, and I want any urban planner that's involved in cities to take my framework and to be able to use it as a guide and as a toolkit to do things that have regenerative, positive impact on the environment and on the society. So what that looks like now is about 11 principles that I'm building out. They're not official yet, so I'm going to give you a sneak peek into what is a tentative start. But the idea is these 11 principles are going to guide us to make sure that, any project you're doing, you're hitting as many of these principles as possible. And each principle I'm going to equip with indicators, quantitative, qualitative indicators, so we can actually see what we're doing. So for now, our indicators are starting up as this. Oh, spaces for all. So a lot of you in the chat were commenting on water, on parks, on green spaces, on, riverfront. So open spaces for all is super important. Looking at two extreme examples. Again, in Miami, every Sunday, there's a drum circle in South Point Park. And this is a free event, open to the public, communal, in a green park where it's clean, where the nature is taken care of. It's enriching. This is another one of how I'm defining principle one. And spaces, it's not just about building a park and then you leave, right? Because a lot of negative things can enter that space. It's about building enriching things. So culturally, sports, so for mental and physical health, educational. So imagine Miami, you have these drum circles, you have people doing yoga in the park. And then you have, I don't know if somebody said they're buzzing in from Boston. So we have a partner that's working in Boston. There's Mascats, which is a street where there's just a bunch of drug addicts that are stuck on this street corner in Boston. This is in a major city in the United States. And you have a space where there's homelessness, where there's people addicted to a very lethal drug. And what are people doing about it? So space is so critical because we're all living here. And that's why we call this regenerative placemaking. But we've also learned that, again, it's not just about going in and building a park or cleaning up a sidewalk that's just going to get refilled the next day. Number two is community engagement and being aware of the time that I have here to speak with you guys. This is probably the most important one of all 11, in my opinion, even of the SDGs, of the World Bank, all the indicators that exist out there in the world. I know we're making this framework that is going to be matched up there with all the other frameworks that exist. But to me, community engagement is the most important because it applies to every single issue you do. So what are we saying with community engagement? We're saying before you do any project, you have to engage the community. You have to talk to them. If you're a developer, if you're a real estate developer, if you're gonna be building an office building, if you're gonna be building a resort, if you're gonna be building a college campus, you have to go in and talk to the community, understand their needs, understand their perspective, and know if you're gonna have a negative or positive impact. I mean, every project is gonna have pros and cons, but what's the best way that you can, and I ask all of you guys in your project implementation, if you've worked on projects around the world, how have you engaged the local community before, during, and after? This is an example of a survey we did in Jacksonville. I mentioned we've been working in Jacksonville, asking about the main issues affecting your neighborhood. Name the top 3. On the scales, how safe do you feel your neighborhood is? How much have housing prices changed in the past 5 years? What is your primary form of transportation? There's so many examples of surveys and great tools out there that you can use to just collect data, survey the community, engage them in discussions. This is super critical. And if any of you want to chime in with your work, how you guys have engaged with your communities, please go ahead and let me see if anyone types in the chat. Can you share a link to this example survey? Absolutely. I can go back to it even if you want as well. What I love about these surveys is, you give people, so when it comes to community outreach, you have really different forms. You have interviews. So you have 3 forms in my experience that I've done with communities. You can do interviews, one-on-one interviews where you're getting qualitative and quantitative data. And there's all sorts of methods where you can, first of all, you tell them that their privacy is going to be respected. You give those disclaimers. There's working groups. So you get a group of people together and you ask questions, and you have a discussion, and then there's surveying. Surveying is great because you can reach hundreds of people. It can be digital, multiple choice is always something I recommend. And rating scales is a very great way to kind of gauge what. So for example, on a scale of 1 to 3, how accessible is food in your area? How affordable is food in the area? Or on a scale of 1 to 5, you could say 1 being very accessible, 5 being very inaccessible. And all of these can change depending on your community, but this is really going to help you get sort of a bird's eye view of whatever the project, whether you're doing food, whether you're doing safety, whether you're doing waste management, water, energy. You can definitely survey the community on all these topics. Okay, I could talk about community engagement forever, so let me go back and continue on the principles. Diversity, inclusion, and diversity, equity, inclusion. This is a hot term now, right? DEI, trendy acronyms love to fly, I've noticed in global discussions. What does it really mean? What does it mean, diversity, equity, inclusion? Is it just about hiring in your company to make sure you're diversely representing your community? Of course, that's important. Hiring practices is a very concrete way to address this, but it's other things. So for example, we did a community event in Little Haiti in our hub, and we invited members of the community, Haitian, Cuban, and we had language interpretation available. So we had someone in Spanish and someone with Haitian Creole. And this is an example of doing inclusion. We live in an extremely diverse country. And I'm sure all of you, whether you're zooming in from different countries, you know, you have immigrants, you have diaspora communities, and some of the beauties of these cities. I mean, I think it's very charming in Miami that Spanish is one of the top languages here. I mean, you can live here and you can speak in your native language, same with New York. But just being aware of those things when you're doing events, just simple thing like having an interpreter available in case people feel more comfortable. What do you guys think are other examples of DEI? Because again, this is a hot acronym, hot term, but what does it mean? What does it practically mean to you guys? If you want to type in the chat, if you want to unmute yourselves. Again, I'm not here to only talk. I'm not the big know-it-all. You guys all know from your experiences where you're coming from. All right, I'll give another example. And this relates to spaces. So again, future cities, we're working in Miami, Little Haiti. Somebody came in and built this great, huge soccer field. That's a great space that has an enriching space, and the community can't access it. It's not equitable, it's not accessible. You have to pay a lot of money, it's not available. So they were very disappointed because this was a great project that came in, and now it's not even, there isn't equity in terms of the access to it. How about transportation? I mean, we have a mobility for all, which is principle number 5, as you see on this graphic, but it relates to DEI because how many buses do I need to get if I'm living in Little Haiti and I work in downtown Miami? I mean, is there equal access to affordable transportation? Is the buses slower? Is the subways not reach me? Maybe there's no subway here, but in other cities. I mean, all of these things that we think about that really relates to DEI, equity and inclusion. Being aware, and this is why in the beginning of my presentation, I said, who lives in cities? Let's think about, be aware of our surroundings. You can live in one city your whole life and be in a bubble of one district. I lived in New York for many years, and with a group of friends once, we went to the real Chinatown of Queens. And it was just like, I had this realization, like I've lived in New York, I've been all over around Brooklyn, the Arab communities, you know, because I am Arab, but also the Colombian communities, the Puerto Rican. I didn't even realize a couple of train stops away, there's this huge, incredible Chinese community. You know, it's also about awareness, I think, of what your city involves. And it's not, again, it's not saying you have to go and be active in all your districts, but just consciousness. Right? I'm here in my panel focusing on the human context of cities. That's why I'm bringing these things up. Just be aware of who's in your city. DEI, okay, we have Santi Couturier saying DEI for us is captured by the quote, diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance. Nice, it hits at the embodiment level of DEI. It's not enough to just have a diverse group of people in the city. It's about having everyone thriving together on the dance floor. I love it. I love that. I'm gonna steal this quote. That's perfect. That's exactly it. I mean, it's great to say, this city is so diverse. We have people from all over the world, all over the country, but are they engaging? Are they equally accessing the same park space as you? You know, Bryant Park in New York, who goes to Bryant Park? Is it just the people that live in the upper income areas of Upper East Side and Midtown East? And Or is it a bit more inclusive of all the people in that space? When I ask who lives in city, construction workers, who are fathers and who are mothers and who are, you know, dancers, and like they have different parts of their identity, but you know, these people are in your surroundings as well. Maybe they live super far away from their site of work. When we're walking down the street, we recognize that their presence. Do we sort of just treat them like another, again, we're building a city for robots. Are they just a robot kind of working on the street, or are we aware of their presence? Are we saying hi to them? Are we being respectful? You know, we're all in this space together, whether we're living districts away or whether you're just here visiting. These are all important aspects. Okay, ecological balance. This one is really amazing and have in my research, so I've been doing a lot of research to build this out. Beautiful, beautiful examples around the world. Nature-based solution, ecological restoration. This is one that's very concrete, very much easy to measure, very much easy for us to talk about because it's so clear, right? What are the contaminated sites of your city? How can you re-bring out the environment? We have beautiful case studies where, you know, just building trees, just reforestation. If anybody wants to chime in with examples of ecological restoration, just building trees to reduce the urban heat effect. These are really, I mean, there's so many policies that we can do for ecological restoration, and recognizing, I think the important thing for me about ecological balance is recognizing the value that nature has to bring to a city. You know, it's not just enough to say, okay, well, we cleaned up this river, or again, we built this park, or, you know, what is the benefit? You have so much to benefit from nature. Let's see, we have a new message. The vertical gardens on the side of the, yeah, Mexico. I think Latin America is a huge champion here. I'm going to open this link that somebody said. Send, let's take a look. See, I want this panel to be inclusive as well, which is why I'm asking you all to chime in. Just give me a minute. I don't know. Are you guys seeing this? So somebody sent strategies for cooling Singapore. Very cool. I mean, the green infrastructure, urban geometry, water features and bodies. These are definitely. Sorry, let me make sure we have my thing back. Sorry, guys. 1 second. Having a little technical problem. Okay, sorry, ready to share again. Let me share. Okay, here we have a great example from Seoul, South Korea. And this was, I thought, an amazing project because they were really able to measure the use of it. So this was before the start of the construction. This was a restoration project on a freeway in Seoul, and this was after. Not only does it look beautiful, but they did a great job of measuring their success. And this is something I'm going to be aware of time, because this is very critical to my principles that I'm building out. These 11 principles that I was showing you guys, every single one of them is going to have quantitative and qualitative indicators on environmental, social, and economic levels, so you can actually measure it. I mean, look at these guys. They measured increased biodiversity by 639%. Plant species increased, bird species, temperatures to reduce urban heat island effects, small particle air pollution. I mean, we can measure this stuff. The social stuff is what's hardest to measure. And I welcome you guys to join me in this effort, in this movement to measure the social side. Increase of bus ridership. More visitors daily, which meant foreign tourists, which contributed to the local economy. Talking about circular economies, keep the dollars there. How many maybe more businesses opened? Economic. So here's an example in Colombia. Medellin, where they transformed, you know, again, reforestation. This was one of the busiest roads in the city. They remodeled and replaced over 2 kilometers of paved sidewalk and pedestrian with gardens, planting over 600 trees, palms, and thousands of smaller plants. Carefully selected species. This is another thing. You don't want to be invasive with new species. At our hub here in Miami, we use all native Florida plants and trees. Now you have birds, parakeets, butterflies, reduced air temperature by 2 degrees Celsius, and the Green Corridor Project won an award. Here's a rain garden in Brazil. This is super cool. It would resolve the issue of impermeability of the urban landscape. The rain gardens were designed to specifically reduce flow rate, quantity, and pollutant load of stormwater runoff, and it treated the urban runoff using plant stones and other natural engineered elements. So pretty cool. All right, let me see if you guys are seeing, whoops, let me stop sharing. Sorry, I'm not as savvy with the share screen as I would like to be. Make sure, oh, my bad, just give me 1 second. It's a good pause, okay. Slideshow, oops. Share screen. Okay, sorry guys. I don't know, be aware of time. I guess I have about 20 more minutes. So I might quickly jump through it and then let's have a discussion. So mobility for all, transportation, education for all, innovative policy and incentives, health and well-being, water, waste, and energy. I at one point was thinking we would make waste a separate issue because it's really different in terms of how water and energy is more infrastructure, more utilities and commercial residential buildings, while waste is kind of a different story. But we'll see. Again, this is tentative. This is not formal. I'm sharing this with you guys in confidence. Cultural preservation celebration, probably my favorite one, just because I'm a multicultural nerd here. So, I mean, what makes LA, New York, Miami, I mean, all these cities, what's so amazing is the multiculturalness of it. And I think what's important about this is when we look at gentrification and these things that are happening in cities, we want to make sure we preserve that beautiful, and this isn't just about foreign cultures, American cultures, the local, looking at a city like Nashville. One of my colleagues just came back from there and was talking about all the music and arts that's there. This is a very important principle that we're definitely going to be keeping. That has huge economic benefit, huge ways it can incorporate environmental issues, spirituality issues, indigenous cultures. I could go on, but I'm just gonna, I feel I'm talking too much, so I'm gonna try to wrap up. And then the last one is inclusive, equitable, and sustainable housing for all. Probably the most challenging in my opinion. How do we deal with the housing crisis? I think there was a Moody's report that the average American is rent burdened. I mean, even me personally, I'm barely able to afford rent. I mean, the housing crisis, but forget about me. Let's talk about communities that are being pushed out. We're working in Little Haiti because Little Haiti is now going to see climate gentrification. It's 10, 12 meters above sea level. People in South Beach, Miami, maybe are going to start flocking to areas that don't have risk of the coastlines rising. And where are the Haitian communities going to go? I mean, how do we tackle this? I really invite you all. You all have my emails. I mean, I really want, this is a collective movement. We're all here on this call today because we care about doing these issues. We care about improving cities and improving lives and the natural environment in these cities. So housing is a very, very tricky issue. Some of our field work in Little Haiti. So a little bit more about us. I should talk about our company, but more future cities. So we're dedicating research to regenerative placemaking. We have a marketing team. We have qualified real estate experts because our partner company, Metro One, has been doing real estate in Wynwood and in Miami for 16 years. And we have event planning. I invite you all to come to the hub. If you want, I can send you all a brief about our hub space. It's beautiful, it's new. We're starting to do events. Come host an event with us. Tell me about your organization, about your nonprofit, about your company, wherever you work. Come do an event with us. We have a beautiful outdoor and indoor space. We can fit about 1,000 people. And our building is a demonstration project. So we have 193 solar panels on the roof. All of our furniture is upscaled and recycled. It's an adaptive reuse building. So Tony Cho, our founder and CEO, he bought the warehouse 20 years ago. So it's a reused warehouse. There's no pouring of the concrete. Just a quick question to Annie. Am I going to be able to get this chat later? Because people are putting in things. I really want to make sure I don't miss the links. So will I get a copy of the chat? Just asking the organizers here.
I think we can, yeah, I can.
Okay,
I can
great. Or it can save somewhere. I think it will save in the recording. Sorry. So just quickly, ways you guys can work with us, and then I'm really going to open it up. So partner organizations, if you align with our values, if you align with everything I've been saying, that I'm sure you're all here for that reason, get in touch. We can do projects together. We're here in Florida, but we're international as well. You can, if you're a leader in the space, you can champion our cause. You can advise us, call me, tell me you want to have a meeting, say, Alexandra, here's how I think you should fix the 11 principles. here's some of my case studies of my experience, global outreach. Sorry, I'm trying to, whoops. Exposure. So again, the event space that I talked about, working together, co-author, we're about to start publishing loads of articles, podcasts, videos. You know, this is a collective mission. We have a beautiful podcast room, by the way, in our hub that's brand new. So come do a podcast with us. The spaces, as I talked about, many ways to partner. We're super excited. And I'm kind of just going to end it here because, this is a little bit about Jacksonville, our project. So these are 4 areas: equity through community, arts and culture, sustainability, and innovation and technology. Today in Jacksonville, we have a flea that's going on. We're working with an organization called Ideas for Us, if any of you have heard of them, doing fleet farming. So we're going to be building a huge urban agriculture to help treat the food desert problem in these areas of Jacksonville. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to take a break from talking. It's been a lot. Anyone want to comment, question, please? Or did I bore you all to death?
Got a question. It seems like I spent a lot of time in the startup world, and in the startup world, there's this lean ideology of like, test quickly, get feedback, do user surveys, test, like, don't build something before you know someone's going to like it. And what I'm hearing, at least in that, like, survey people and get feedback before you build something, is kind of bringing that like startup lean mentality into city building, which is like, don't just build it because you're a developer who has an idea and you think people are going to like it. It's like, actually gather data, measure, figure out if this is going to work or not. Does that resonate? Like, this idea of like bringing startup kind of mentality, iterate quickly. It's really hard, obviously, when you're building physical infrastructure and things move slowly. But I'm curious, I mean, Miami seems to be a city that is really taking this, like, let's iterate, let's bring in kind of this like startup type mentality into our city. Is that accurate, or is maybe thinking in the same way of like move fast and break things, which is kind of classic startup mentality? Is that not something you really do in a city, because this is people's livelihood? I'm curious how to balance, like, one, be responsible with also wanting to iterate quickly. Feels like there's some, like,
well,
there.
I mean, I understand the rush to iterate quickly, but I mean, I think what you just said, and I typed in the chat, God, the data is so critical. You know, the phrase would be like, walk the walk, don't just talk the talk. Like, there's so many people talking about stuff, but you have to actually, like, data is going to give you, is the meat, is the bread and butter, is everything of your project. And it's not difficult to gather. And if you don't have that expertise, there are plenty of agencies that you can hire that can work with you on it, or you could put a job posting. I'm looking for a local community outreach officer. I mean, one of the reasons I started working here, beyond my extensive research experience, is my community experience. I mean, I worked in refugee camps, so I know you have to know sensitivities of, but I know that region, right? Like, if somebody called me and says, come to Cambodia tomorrow, well, I'm not going to be as informed. You know, you need people local, language is important, they understand. You know, we're hiring from the community. Hiring practices is very key to gathering that data. They can help you get the most honest data that you need. And again, if you want to be, like, from all angles, from pure economics, like, your project can fail if you don't know if this is useful for the community. There's an example of that. It was a sidewalk lab, I think, in Toronto. And I'm not gonna, like, call out companies with, like, whatever. I mean, everyone has successes and failures, but like it was a project that the community is like, why is this here? It's not relevant. It doesn't suit us. And they left. So even if beyond just the do good about it, it's also like just feasibility. You know, communities have a lot of power, and it's the most amazing resource. I don't know if this is answering your question, but it's the most amazing resource that you have. They have knowledge, they have network, they have skills. Use them, elevate them, like, empower them, because they can help with your project. So as if you're a developer, you're coming in, talk to the community. They have their network, they know their surroundings, they're super, like, this is a great resource as well. And it's a win-win is what I'm trying to say. So I think you're definitely on the right path, Santi. I mean, it's about, so somebody's commenting here about warm data versus cold data. So yeah, I mean, and data, you know, but it's not like, you know, it's not your total blueprint. You're going to gather as much as you can, but it's like, you know, it's not just because you interview surveyed 500 people, you know, there's also the other hundreds of people you didn't survey. So you have to take it with, and there's experts in that space that, you know, it's not that expensive to hire, whether a team, whether, you know, hire 1 or 2 people for develop. Sorry, I was just checking on the chat. It's not a huge expense, and it's totally worth it. So yeah, thank you for your engagement, guys. Cybec Toronto now reborn as a Canadian-driven open smart city project. Nice. Yeah, I don't know if it was Toronto. Maybe I don't want to misspeak or call anything out, but it was just, I do remember, because in my research, I'm looking, we can't just look at positive case studies. We do have to look, and Tony, our founder, he's very comfortable admitting where things went wrong, and admitting past projects he did that didn't work out. And I think we need more leaders like that. We don't all do everything perfectly all the time. I mean, I don't think anyone in this room, anyone anywhere can say that they've done every project with perfect success without some mishaps, without some mistakes, without some negative impact. It's a natural part of the process. The best thing we can do is learn from it and not be afraid to admit it and just do it better next time. Whew. Much of the world is flocking to areas in the US that is susceptible to future climate change like Florida, Texas. Interesting. Thank you, Sean. I really hope you guys do all reach out. I'm just going to drop my email in here, although I'm sure you have it. Come visit us, email me, let's have a conversation, let's partner together. Let's do events together. Yeah, I think I'm talked out. So if anyone else wants to chime in, Nicolas, did I go ramble on? Did I make sense?
You're so good.
You were so good. Right.
Super thankful that we got you in here, and yeah, it was incredible. I'm super
happy to share the presentations and even the maps, some of that refugee data in case that's of interest. Or maps is another resource that's going to be your best friend in any development.
Which
know
one?
your maps, ArcGIS data. Those are, I mean, again, like we visualize our cities, you know, look at them, think about, we did an event with Jacksonville with a community. We invited community members to our big warehouse space. It's empty, right? Because we're building it, and we just laid a huge map of the neighborhood on the table, and we had different pins, and we're like, tell us about your neighborhood. Here's schools, churches, restaurants, and like people start pinning, I live here, and it was such a fun exercise. Like, we all share this space. Let's like, tell us about your community. What's missing? And then you see it on the table. You're like, oh wait, there's no grocery store. Oh wait, there's no.
That reminds me a bit of a Regenerative group, which they're doing amazing work.
Yeah,
has an incredible wireframe called Story of Place, which is like, it's like, come and like do as many design charades as you need locally. No, it's like, so you have a comprehensive story of the full ecosystem. So this is the social, but also like the environmental, the ecological, the financial, the whole thing, right? So you can craft a story of where it is and where you want to take it.